As the world gets closer to dangerous climate territory, people who normally haven't given a damn are starting to change their tune. This is a good sign, as it means more innovators will come into the space and offer better solutions to what is a serious problem. That said, environmentalists, in their supposed wisdom, have decided, instead of meeting these people halfway, to shift the goalposts ever further, thus alienating these people and further exacerbating the problem. Why the hell are y'all like this? Seriously. It infuriates me that for people who claim to be ride or die followers of climate science, y'all don't know the first thing about it. You seem to not know things that they teach students all the way back in middle school. At least, they taught those kinds of things when I was in middle school almost 20 years ago. Today's road trip talk is going to be a bit more comprehensive. You will see more sourcing because I don't want people to accuse me of talking out of my ass this time. Remember how I've been sick for almost 2 years and how I've used that time to do tons of environmental research prior to starting a YouTube channel? Yeah, it's for stuff like this. So let's just get into it. We're going to start with the most obvious and recent story. Republicans in Congress have most recently been rallying behind an initiative to plant 1 trillion trees across the continental United States. This is obviously a good thing because trees convert carbon dioxide into oxygen through photosynthesis. Of course, that is not the only thing trees are good for, but we're getting to that. Environmentalists were quick to call it a distraction. Their arguments were that it wouldn't be enough carbon removal to offset industrial emissions, that it would take a lot of land to do so, and that it would increase the risk of wildfires by serving as fuel in a warming world. Now this last part actually makes my blood boil, because it coincides with another flawed ideology environmentalists have started to gravitate toward, that somehow deserts are actually a good thing. This came about from a study published around 2014, examining the carbon capture potential of plants in the Mojave Desert. One of the takeaways from that study was, and I quote, "If deserts expand, knowing their carbon storage capacity will help explain what that expansion means for warming, and whether it's an overall gain or loss for the planet may depend on the ecosystems they replace." I've never heard a more defeatist argument in my life. Trading forests for deserts is absolutely not smart. If we look at trees within a vacuum, they are rather carbon neutral. They take in carbon dioxide as they grow, usually for hundreds of years, but as they shed parts of themselves, or if they die, microbes will feed on the plant waste, and the carbon decay will release carbon dioxide in what is known as the carbon cycle. However, it is completely possible and viable to convert tree waste into a long-term carbon storage medium, using processes such as pyrolysis and torrefaction. This is where plant waste is heated to high temperatures in the absence of oxygen, forming a crystalline solid almost like a fossil, which can then be stored underground indefinitely. It's like how plant fossils formed in nature, just a lot faster. So yes, trees can be carbon negative if they're taking in carbon dioxide all their lives, and we fossilize the plant waste so it doesn't release that carbon dioxide back into the world. But again, that's not the only benefit of more trees. The leaves of trees collect and concentrate ambient water vapor in what is known as evapotranspiration. This is why forests tend to be more humid than deserts, as trees reach much higher into the sky and can draw moisture down to the ground. That added moisture keeps plants healthy and helps regulate wildfires. Oh, and not to mention that certain species of tree, such as the ponderosa pine, use wildfire as an evolutionary tool to both germinate their seeds and regulate the populations of other plant species which might be hazardous. So yes, in some cases, fire is good for the environment. Indigenous cultures have known this for millennia, but climate scientists seem to be blissfully unaware of it. Funny that. TLDR, trees can save the world, and to argue that they will make the problem worse is the definition of insanity. Moving on. Seeing as this is a car-centric YouTube channel, I hear frequently the ire of fossil fuels such as gasoline and diesel being the chief scapegoat for most of the climate discussions. Of course, when we begin moving to EVs, the environmentalists shifted the goalposts yet again. They argued that the necessary lithium was too dangerous and environmentally toxic to extract, that the increased weight of EVs led to more aerosolized tire rubber and brake dust, and that the electricity for these vehicles was still being generated by fossil fuels such as coal and natural gas. Oh boy, where do I even begin with all this? Energy density of batteries is a problem. Lithium is also a bit of a tricky material to acquire. Solving these two engineering challenges will result in lighter vehicles that have longer travel ranges as well as a generally reduced aerosol particulate footprint. So that is a win-win, but that's also a fraction of the argument. You know how all of our roads and parking lots are made of black asphalt? Asphalt has a thermal absorption of 90%, and this is not very well studied. If you've ever wondered why cities are 10 to 20 degrees hotter than their surrounding rural areas, it's because these urban features act as a literal heat sink. So it's not just the cars, it's also the infrastructure. However, they can actually be retooled to act as a literal heat deflector. While the color black absorbs heat, the color white reflects it in a mechanism known as albedo. Less solar energy means a lower ambient temperature, but it requires a large surface area in order to be effective. An area the size of, say, numerous parking lots and roadways. Rather than demolishing these parking lots and roadways, by building solar canopies over them, which are coated in a reflective white paint, it could theoretically be possible to lower the ambient temperature in cities, completely nullifying that 10 to 20 degree difference. This is much cheaper than installing solar panels, much cheaper to maintain than solar panels, and will likely last far longer than solar panels before needing to be replaced. But it does leave the question, if we aren't doing the solar panel thing, how will electric cars get their electricity? Well, research has been advancing into using municipal water supplies, which are often under tremendous mechanical pressure, as a hydroelectric power system. It's actually pretty genius if you think about it. The average American household uses between 100 and 175 gallons of water per day. Large cities then will see water flows in the hundreds of millions of gallons just to meet their daily water needs. Municipal flow rates can be between 10 gallons per minute and 400 gallons per minute. Presently, these water flows are completely untapped. However, as you saw in my City Skylines videos, the construction of elevated reservoirs and other small-scale diversion pools along water lines can be used to facilitate all kinds of kinetic power systems. If used in tandem, these systems can supply accessory power to municipal grids all hours of the day, not just when the sun is shining. Solar panels are still going to be needed, but a better construction approach is putting them over exposed water canals to prevent evaporative water losses at the same time. That was also covered in my City Skylines videos, and California is actually beginning their deployment studies for this approach. Alright, so we've talked about how trees are absolutely vital as a climate solution, how battery innovations will make EVs the standard mode of personal transport in due time, how solar reflectors can do more for the planet than even solar panels can, and how our water systems can provide even more power when we need it most. The last thing I want to talk about is seaweed. This will probably be my third time talking about it, and I did promise a full research presentation at some point, but to keep things short and sweet, I believe we can grow seaweeds in the desert as a means of carbon capture. Seaweeds grow incredibly fast, much faster than trees do, or any land-based plant for that matter. They also filter a lot more carbon dioxide, and they can be farmed for food. I drafted a literal 23-page research paper showing how it could be done in the Pacific Southwest. And the environmental groups I showed it to turned around and threatened to sue me if I ever so much as tried it. I could not believe the stupidity. The thing that really got me was they claimed introducing seaweeds to the desert was, quote unquote, introducing an invasive species which would adversely intrude upon native species. Let me just clarify. A saltwater species is being accused of intruding upon native freshwater or even land-based species, when the latter two are completely incompatible with the former. Formation of isolated, controlled marine biomes in parts of the desert with minimal existing biodiversity poses absolutely zero risk. And there are many areas of deserts, like the Mojave, that would be viable for these projects. In fact, approximately 14% of the Mojave, a resounding 4.45 million acres, could be examined for site suitability purposes. That number, by the way, is adapted from a Nature Conservancy study in 2010. But would you like to know the icing on the cake? A few months after I got those hostile letters in my inbox, I saw an article featuring a UK company called Brilliant Planet. They had the novel idea of literally pumping seawater into the deserts of Morocco to farm saltwater algae. That thing, which environmentalists here in the States told me was too dangerous to be considered, is already being implemented on a trial basis in other countries. Environmentalists in America are so goddamn stupid. I just don't get it. I tend to tell myself, in a way that is admittedly rather self-deprecating, that I am not very smart. But if I could spend several months putting together a viable proposal using very basic information found off Google that somehow jived with what other entrepreneurs in the scientific community were attempting, how is it that these supposed climate experts can be so ignorant of so many things when it comes to climate? You know, I was 7 years old when I told myself I wanted to grow up to be an environmentalist. The thing that got me into it was, wouldn't you believe it, Pokemon the movie 2000. The whole point of that movie was about keeping the planet's weather in harmony. So as a child, I spent a lot of time learning about science, going above and beyond what my peers were willing to explore. But as the years passed, and I finished high school and went to college, I could see the discourse was not aligned with good science, at least here in the States. Some of the best climate initiatives of the early 2010s were being implemented in Africa and Asia. The West was already falling behind. And the funny thing is, it's only gotten worse. We cannot undo industrialization. It is far too late for that. The only way out of our current mess is forward. Forward thinking will allow us to refine and optimize our society in a way that will lead to carbon neutrality over time. Will it be before the pivotal 2 degrees Celsius warming? I can't say for sure. Yet if that number scares you so much that it causes you to take no action at all and to pray the world will magically heal itself if we all just shut down society for a few years, you clearly slept through the pandemic when the world literally did shut down. 2 years of suppressed industrial output worldwide, and the carbon levels in 2022 were still record-breaking. You cannot fix this by doing nothing. Life is about embracing an acceptable degree of risk, and we need to risk it all if we want any chance of surviving this. Unorthodox solutions need to be tested, no matter what. So that's my 2 cents. Let me know what you think in the comments, or not. It's up to you. Thank you so much for watching.